Dive into the shadows of our society as I look to uncover the truth in unconventional conspiracy theories clouding our world. Tune in to the Behind Closed Doors podcast with your host, Luke Vi, as I explore deep into facts and speculation behind a range of mysterious and unofficial explanations behind conspiracy theories today. Are you ready to unearth what is truly lurking behind closed doors? Thank you for tuning in to the Behind Closed Doors podcast, here with your host, Luke Vi, and I'm very excited just to have you along here for the ride for this new podcast, just bringing you up-and-coming new conspiracy theories here out in the world. A lot of these you may have heard of, may have touched up on with a little bit of research, or maybe you just have not heard of at all. Our inaugural topic for this week is the 5G conspiracy. And now, before we get started into that, make sure you go drop a follow on the new X account. It is at TBCD_podcast, where I'll be posting links just to get to the YouTube page, be able to connect with you guys and host polls for what the next podcast should be. So make sure you guys drop a follow and stay connected. And now getting into the topic for this week, 5G conspiracies. Just remember, everything on this podcast is facts and speculation, so take everything with a grain of salt, especially with conspiracy theories. There's not a whole lot of facts behind it. I mean, there's the certain lockdown facts about when and hows and this and that, but there's still a lot of things that are up in the air, up for questioning, up for research, and just still up for conspiracy, just like many others. Just some quick information, just so if you didn't know what 5G is the successor to 4G. It is the fifth generation technology for cellular networks, which allows you to use data when you're not connected to Wi-Fi, which phone companies, they began trialing about 5, 6, 7 years ago. In 2018, it showcased faster speeds and lower latency, and there's so much science behind it. It's actually really crazy and really fascinating. But then in April of 2019, there's a lot of dilemma, a lot of fighting back and forth between countries about who actually was the first to install 5G. And so behind my research, it was in the April of 2019, South Korea became one of the first countries to launch 5G nationwide and was able to claim that victory over countries such as United States and China. Being such a much smaller country, it was a big success to them that they were wanting to claim. And then just a month later, in May of 2019, the United States saw its first commercial 5G offered by Verizon and AT&T just in select cities. And then just a little bit later, in June of 2019, the first 5G-enabled smartphones were released to consumers. So under optimal conditions, 5G can offer up to 10 gigabytes of download speed and just hold a larger number of connected devices within that network. Later in 2019 and 2020, many other countries began implementing and expanding their own types of 5G networks, including China and the UK. And in the UK, it was especially problematic. We'll get into that a little bit later in the episode, with just the backlash that was received over there just across the pond. And just the main concern with these 5G networks is just that the radio waves, the electro waves, are just not suited, or our bodies are just not built for that type of waves. And the main concern with that is just the 5G radiation. People think that it can cause different types of cancers, neurological disorders, and just other ailments that, like I said, the body is not used to being around. There's been even claims online that 5G-enabled robots are taking over the human mind, and that even Elon Musk's neurochip that he's trying to implement, that you've seen people get implanted in their brains, and then they're able just to play video games with their mind. That's the first thing that comes to mind. People think that 5G is being implemented around the world just so they can get chips put in their brain and that we can get controlled through those 5G waves. And lastly, the main one that really started the whole 5G conspiracy was just that 5G caused coronavirus. And I know that does sound crazy, but there were actually a couple of celebrities, a decent amount of celebrities that took to social media and was standing behind it. And when I was looking through the tweets, one of the tweets that stood out to me was from rapper, singer MIA. And here's what her tweet said word for word. It was posted on March 24th, 2020, and it says, "Yes, until 5G is set up all over the world for the first time, all done at the same time in every country across the entire globe, of which that happens to be when everyone is going through the first pandemic in 100 years or in their lifetime when the world is shut down. Nice one. And it's interesting just to read her stance, just because at the time, everybody was chronically online because of COVID. Everybody was stuck at home. And so a lot of people were just on their phones, and a lot of people were just listening to who they found comfort from and influencers that they just liked hearing from and wanted to hear good news or hear their side of things from, hear their opinions. And that's just what started a lot of these conspiracy issues, especially with this one. And the first version of this theory claimed that there was no coincidence that the 5G technology was trialed for a while in Wuhan, and that's also where the first case of coronavirus started. And it's hard just to see how a radio wave and electro wave can cause such a virus. The main explanation for that from the people taking the side of that 5G caused COVID-19 was that it just weakens the human immune system, allowing them just to become more sick and more vulnerable to sicknesses. In that, alongside that conspiracy theory, another one was that the coronavirus was man-made, manufactured just to control the population. And that's a whole nother conspiracy theory in and of itself. It's easy just to dispute that claim as false, just because plain and simply 5G towers have been around way before that March 2020 or like late 2019 when the first COVID cases first started coming around, because it started in South Korea and then in the US with Verizon and AT&T. So if there was a direct link to 5G in the coronavirus, we would have been seeing cases well before then. And I wanted to do a little bit more deeper research within the United States and what some people within the population thought. And a place I went to for that was Reddit. And here's just a couple of accounts with people here in the US and their experiences with 5G. These accounts online state their own personal reasons behind their belief. User Life Got Me said, quote, "Whatever, dude, I lived 0.25 miles from a cell tower for 2.5 years. Constant buzzing noise, 24/7 low-grade headache, shoulder and neck muscles in a non-stop state of extreme, like rubber bands tension. To hell with that, with what it's called, or how many hertz or bands or blah, blah, blah frequency. It made me sick. I moved to the country, and it took a week before the headache stopped." Another user named Nambi Naea said, 5G is required to run the surveillance grid with facial recognition, walking analysis if you are wearing a mask, Big Brother monitoring systems that will connect all of the Internet of Things for the cybernetic modded future hellscape we are being forced into with no alternative if you want to buy, trade, or sell. Those are some interesting notes just to keep in mind, just because there's not a whole lot of studies behind the effects of 5G on the human body, other than just, the thought that radio waves and electro waves do not affect diseases in any way towards the human body. And so that's already out the window. But one thing that Nabi said was that it was required for the use for the surveillance grid with facial recognition and walking analysis if you are wearing a mask, Big Brother monitoring system. And this is pretty relevant just because a lot of pro sports teams, I believe it was all 32 NFL teams, they implemented a facial recognition software in their stadiums just to be able to scan faces, just to be able to see if anybody's on wanted lists, and then just to be able to, keep eyes on all the fans within the stadium. And with that, it requires a lot of power and a lot of frequency and a lot of waves just to be able to run that sort of technology. And so that isn't too far-fetched, but at the end of the day, it's 5G. It's what's needed just to be able to run newer technology. As time moves on, more upgrades happen, and we just move more into the future. Same thing happened with 4G and 3G before it. It's like trying to run an iPhone 16 on 1G technology from the 2000s. Just the technology is not compatible, and it just won't work, and we just need those sort of upgrades to our technology infrastructure just to be able to keep moving on into the future with new advances. But in reality, conspiracy theories about mobile phone technology have been circulating since the 1990s and just have a long historical root within the conspiracy theories in United States history. Doctors first talked of a radiophobia as early as 1903, following on from fears about power lines and microwaves in the 1970s. And then even opponents of 2G technology in the 90s suggested that radiation from mobile phones could cause cancer, and that this information was just being covered up from the general public. And now other conspiracy theories about 5G include that the idea was responsible for unexplained deaths in birds, in trees, and then, like as we said, the coronavirus. The rollout of 5G was not smooth by any means, especially in the UK. There was a large uprising and a large uproar and a lot of backlash with the rollout of 5G.
There's your 5G policy.
5G mast on fire.
5G! Yeah! No signal here. 0G now.
Man's out here doing the business. What are you lot doing?
It lowers your immunity and runs people down.
5G is a weapon.
Hi guys, do you know what you're doing now? You're laying 5G.
Yeah.
So you know that kills people.
Now, just to break it down, is 5G actually dangerous? And so 5G is a lot similar to 4G and 3G, but just it has a higher frequency than 4G and 3G, which generally has a lower frequency. And now this is where a lot of the confusion and concern comes in, is just because it's a greater frequency, they're a lot closer together, which does pose a radiation risk. But looking at it a little bit deeper, there's a difference between harmful radiation and non-harmful radiation. So harmful radiation includes UV, like the sun on a hot summer day, X-rays and gamma rays, like if you were to go to the doctor's office. But those non-harmful rays that we're talking about with 5G is 3G, 4G, 5G, radio waves, sound, TV, those are all types of non-harmful radiation to the body. The most interesting aspect of this conspiracy theory is just how quick it spread, reaching millions and millions and millions of people almost instantly, as people are talking about it on social media, can be so dangerous. There has been the idea of just those types of waves and everything affecting surrounding the human body throughout our entire lifetimes, which brings the tinfoil theory of, like, if you put a tinfoil on your head and then you don't have to worry about those harmful frequencies affecting your brain. It's just that it's more the thought of the public when they're out and about and around that there's these new waves that are affecting them. If you do your own research on social media, just like I did on Reddit, you see a lot of people, and a big stance is that these 5G rays are harmful, that it did cause coronavirus, it does affect us, and it does make us sick, it makes our immune systems weaker. And to burst your bubble, these 5G conspiracy did not start in these Facebook groups, but according to the Guardian video explainer why the 5G coronavirus conspiracy theory is false, the first noted is in a Belgian newspaper on January 22nd, 2020. Within a week, different publications were fact-checking that claim that there is no direct link between 5G and the coronavirus. Fact-checking was incredible back in 2020. We know how big misinformation was back in the day, those 4 years ago. And so fact-checking, they were on that newspaper's case about it. But like I said, these conspiracy theories were being spread rapidly through social media, a lot through memes as well, as memes were really popular then. That would make a meme out of anything, a joke out of anything. At the time, through social media as well, there was a map of the rollout of 5G and a coronavirus map, and it was almost identical, showing, the US, China, Russia, a lot of those bigger, more heavily populated countries having more cases and having 5G. But that was also debunked just because, COVID was a worldwide thing. It affected every single country and not just the ones that had 5G at the time. Although those maps showed spreading on social media was a correlation and not a causation. Just to kind of wrap things up, 5G is still kind of a new conspiracy. There's a lot of personal accounts that people are coming out with. There's still a lot of new information and new data, new surveys coming out about 5G. So it's still just really hard exactly to pinpoint how this new type of technology affects the human body. And it's still important to note that there's still a lot of belief out there that 5G causes a breakdown of the human immune system, making them more susceptible to disease, and still many others that still think that 5G was the direct cause of the coronavirus. As we noted from the personal account, from the people from Reddit, the person that lived 0.25 miles away and just had constant headaches, constant aches and pains, and then the other one that believes that it is used for facial recognition, and it is also used for just Big Brother monitoring systems for the U.S. government over its citizens. It'll be interesting just to see how this type of technology develops in the future, because 5G is still relatively new, but it still started rolling out in 2018, 2019, and I wouldn't be surprised if many developers are looking forward towards the next type of generation for technology. I encourage you all just to still go out and do your own research on this topic. I really do appreciate you joining me for this first episode. It's a little bit of a shorter episode, just getting straight to the point, because this theory hasn't been around just as long as many other ones. And so I just want to encourage you also just to please go follow the podcast's X page. It is at TBCD_podcast. That way you can stay in the know about the podcast when new shows are coming out, and just so I'm able just to connect with you guys. And so I really do appreciate you for listening today. I had a lot of fun doing research on 5G. It was something that was still new to me, but it was really cool just to be able to learn more about it and share with you guys. So I really do encourage you just to follow the X page, again, TBCD_podcast. That way I'm able to connect with you guys and keep you guys up to date. You're listening to the Behind Closed Doors podcast with your host, Luke Vi, signing off until next week.